Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. This is a special because I'm joined by a Celtic State of Mind listener, Ewan Martin. You appear as Ewan Boy Martin, and you have been watching ACSOM for some time. But this year, of all years, is a particularly special one because you turned 50 this month, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Born 1971, and sporting a fantastic Celtic Shamrock top, I've got to say, Ewan, one of my favourites.
Yep. Very kindly given to you by me.
That's your 50th birthday present.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I hope you enjoy that. But I think back to you being born in 1971, and then I start thinking, well, when do you start getting into the team? When do you start recognising the players? What was your team when you were introduced to going to the games?
Oh, back in the 70s, I mean, TV didn't have much football, and I was a kid in Glasgow growing up at first, and so the Lions had come and gone. I was just like a toddler when that, 74, when that finished. So I would say probably 79, 80 was when I really started to know the players' names and who was in the team. And then, so from about 81, 82 onwards, I knew everything about Celtic. So it was just a dream, kind of watching the team back then. And the thing was, back then, it wasn't like now, where it was the dominance of Celtic and Rangers.
Yeah.
It was, and Rangers were actually rubbish. Back in the early 80s, it was Aberdeen. Aberdeen were the team you feared. I always remember thinking, oh no, it's Aberdeen. Mm-hmm. And even at home, you'd be thinking, if we can get a draw today, that's a good result. And so back then, when you won, it was special because it wasn't like you didn't expect to win. Whereas today, I think it's kind of...
There's a great number of the teams that, and this isn't feeling entitled, but there is a standard that was set where you expect to beat the vast majority of the teams in the league. Mm-hmm. Back then, you're looking at Dundee United and Aberdeen, and then after that, maybe Rangers, in terms of how strong they were.
I don't know. I think Hearts were better than Rangers back then. Mm-hmm. If you think back to the Old Firm games, when it was an Old Firm, Ibrox, if you look at some of the old videos, it was like half Celtic fans in Ibrox because they couldn't fill the stands. They had a very small support back then because I think they probably went through what we went through in the 90s of winning nothing, being pretty poor, and the crowds just fell away. So... You mentioned that 79-80 season. I'm looking back retrospectively. I was too young to remember it, but the 10 men winning the league, the Rangers had a game to play after the 4-2 game. And, the newspaper reports tell you that 2,500 fans were at Ibrox for that final game. So when you think back then, even though you were born in the time of Jock Stein, do you consider Billy McNeill as being like your first Celtic manager? Aye. I can't really recall when Jock Stein... For me, Jock Stein was the Scotland manager, I think, at the time, when I kind of was aware of football. Yeah. Yeah, so I was, Billy McNeill.
Because 82 World Cup, so Stein was the manager of Scotland.
Yeah.
During that campaign.
And Spain 82, I remember that well.
I think back as well because you were roughly the same age. You've got a few years
I'm a bit older.
But Billy McNeill was my first Celtic manager, but it was his second spell.
Second stint, yeah.
Yeah, and I think about Billy McNeill and the work he'd done at Aberdeen. And then obviously Alex Ferguson comes in and he carries on that work and he takes it to another level. But at that stage, with McNeill at the helm, we were talking about this on a show this week, he took us to the quarterfinals of the European Cup against Real Madrid. Did you think at that time as a Celtic fan, did you still look upon Celtic as being a European force?
The early 80s, yes. But as the 80s went on, it became less and less. You were getting knocked out in the first round, second round more often. Mm-hmm. And by the time you got to the end of the night, the 80s, it was like a distant memory of what we were in Europe.
Yeah.
So that was kind of sad to see. And also our dominance in Scottish football was, going in the wrong direction too. So, yeah.
What's your thoughts? I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but I keep hearing about this Scottish football revolution, which started in 1986 with the introduction of Graham Souness to Rangers.
86.
And buying all these players from, a lot of them coming up from England. I don't think it was a revolution, because I think it weakened Scottish football. You look at the European performances of the likes of Dundee United and Aberdeen, and even Celtic at that stage, and you compare them to 10 years later, where we were nowhere in Europe.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. And we weren't producing the same players as a nation. I'm not sure that was a good thing in '86 for Scottish football, to change the mould of rearing your own players, because all these teams were largely Scottish-based players, weren't they?
Aye. I mean, I think Souness, and then I think Murray came after that a year later. I think it destroyed Scottish football, because they come in with the big checkbook, as you say. I mean, I think at the time English clubs couldn't play in Europe.
Yeah.
So the attraction to Rangers was massive, plus the big money. And then they were spending so much money that no other team in the league could compete with that. And for a long time, I think teams neglected the youth and panic buyed, buying these dud forms, which Celtic did a lot.
We'll talk about a few of them.
Yeah. And just from a very competitive league, back in the early to mid 80s, to then a one-team league for 9 years, now to what we have now, a two-horse race. Yeah. No,
I would agree with that. At the time, I understand how people see it as an injection of cash, perhaps, or big names into Scottish football.
Well, the media loved it, didn't they?
Yeah,
but we know why that is.
No, you're right. I'm not going to skip too far ahead, because those early 80s periods, we're talking about homegrown players. I think Paul McStay, Charlie Nicholas. Who was your hero at that time?
I think my first hero when I was younger was probably Charlie Nicholas. He was the guy who scored the goals. And he was the first player I remember who left, and I was absolutely gutted.
Yeah.
That thing was in the news, Charlie's gone. And I was like, oh, no way.
Because the last one would have been Kenny, 77.
I see, just a bit too young to remember that, really, So, but we've also had a good habit of replacing our strikers with another good striker.
Yeah.
I mean, I can come on to that in a minute. But yeah, Paul McStay, man, I think Charlie Nicholas was, 19 when he was a first-team player. Paul McStay, 18. Go back further to the 70s, before my time, but Roy Aitken.
Yeah.
I mean, what is he, 12? Not quite, but
the youngest.
Aye, so, and then, so it used to be, see nowadays when I know kind of jumping forward, but you talk about like Mikey Johnson or so-and-so at 22, are they still young? Are they?
I remember a couple of years ago being in the Cluj game away, and Dembele plays and becomes the youngest ever Celt to play in Europe, 16 years of age. And I know he's not developed the way we would have expected, but you're right. I mean, at that time, kind of late teens, you'd get thrown in. So after the likes of, let's say, Roy Aitken, Pat Bonner and Tommy Burns, we had a new crop coming through with Paul McStay and Charlie Nicholas and eventually Peter Grant coming through as well.
Yeah.
You were devastated. What was it about Charlie? As well as the goals, he had a bit of style, didn't he? He was gallus.
Aye, he was. He had that. He just had that glint in his eye, that cheeky wee. I mean, obviously he's not the sharpest tool in the box, but he had that thing as a kid. You just thought, wow, he's an idol, But I think if you score 50 goals in a season, and especially the ones against Rangers, and you just adored them, So,
absolutely.
So and then it's just painful.
What's your relationship like? Well, now.
I don't hate him, but I don't agree with it. I mean, it's one of these things when next players come out and slate the club. Some annoy me more than others. I get really frustrated and annoyed when he says things when he's out of touch. He's down south. He sees wee clippets and says wee things, but I'll still never forget what he did in his first stint at Celtic, even though now he's not a legend. Because to me, a Celtic legend is an ex-player or a manager who never slate the club, and more importantly, never slate the fans. Never go down on the fans. You can be a great Celtic, whatever, but as soon as you come out in the media, bad mouth, like Davy Proven's another one. I love Davy Proven. What a player he was. But then he comes out and he's negative. So as soon as an ex-player becomes a pundit and becomes negative and slates the club, or can even have a go at the fans, they lose that right to be a legend.
Well, that's interesting, because one player who you don't hear much from, and I know he's an ambassador at the club, is Aitken, but you would never hear Roy Aitken badmouthing Celtic for the fans.
No, never. Very old.
Danny McGrain.
But
there's Danny, there's another player. What was your thoughts on Danny? He was in that team.
He was the most memorable player, because when I started to watch him, he had a beard. So straight away, I remember my first game was actually...
And he looked older than he was.
He
spoke about that earlier.
He did. my first game was at Celtic Park. I'm not sure if it's 84, 85. So because now I live in Dunoon, which is a bit away from Glasgow, but being a kid, my dad passed away when I was like 9, so I'd no vehicle or opportunity to get to the games until, I think it was my pal's uncle took us up. And it was before they did the main stand. It was just a big brick wall, so standing out there in the main stand, Dundee United. And I remember just all excited, and team ran down the tunnel and there's Danny McGrain. There's Danny McGrain, But again, I remember looking across at the jungle. I just thought, wow. You feel it. What a sight. You're like, man. And I just knew I'm going in there. Mm-hmm. I'm going in there, so, which I did eventually.
It was a rite of passage, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
My dad used to take me to the Celtic end originally. But as you just said there, you were always looking at that jungle. When can I go in there?
Aye.
And it was a different world as well. Listen, people look back fondly on it. There's a lot of things about the football back then that weren't great as well, though, as an experience. The facilities were terrible.
Well, the toilets, folks, a lot of folk think you're joking when you talk about the jungle. Before the game, they were fine. But no lie, at half time, you had to have welly boots on.
Terrible.
It was like, I was that deep in, piss, basically, and you couldn't go in unless you want to have your feet sodden and pee. And quite often, folk would just go up the back of the jungle, at the wall, and just... And pee. And you just watch the pee running down. Yeah, you're thinking it's crazy.
It's changed days because back then, although you did see women at the games, nothing like what we see.
No, there was very little.
There was, and now I think that for the better, the football clubs have looked at the stadium and looked at that as an arena where people need to be comfortable, right? Because it's, you could go with your wife and your kids, whereas back then it was carryouts in the jungle, and as you say, the stench of urine throughout the game. But at the same time, though, a big part of this for me, as well as the smells and the songs and all that, was that the stuff people would just say, you would pick up the humour and the comedic value of a lot of the characters in the crowd. That was massive because I'm not from Glasgow, of course, so I was getting all that Glasgow patter. And you would get it on the bus through to the game, but it was the Fife version. But once you were in the game, you would pick up the terminology and the phrases. But in terms of humour, Celtic fans always had a sense of humour, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
We could laugh at ourselves.
Even when we had that bad patch in the 90s, we actually started to sing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life" to ourselves. Aye. We were getting beat. We just start singing it. So we could always take ourselves out of that fact that we were terrible. Because I think after a while, you kind of realise we're terrible. I know I'm jumping forward to the 90s here, but you just thought, we were terrible, but we could have a laugh about it and not be overly angry or aggressive about it, so, yeah.
You asked earlier on, when you came to the studio, and we're having a wee look about at the front there, about Brian McClare. So McClare comes in as a replacement, as such, for Charlie.
From Motherwell. 20 years old.
Yeah, under 100 grand.
Yeah.
And although he signs for Billy McNeill, he never plays for Billy McNeill. Because McNeill leaves.
Yeah, Davy Hay comes in.
And I've spoken to Chalky, and he says that, him and Davy Hay didn't get on at Motherwell. So when Davy Hay replaces McNeill, McClare's thinking, my dream move. But just for people watching the show who maybe didn't watch Celtic during that era, Brian McClare for 4 seasons was our top goal scorer. Well,
we're talking about Charlie Nicholas leaving and how I was gutted. I'll tell you one thing. I loved Brian McClare even more. Maybe because I was older, I was watching it more, and also I actually got to see him in person. I actually got to games when he was playing, and that's so again when the time came when he left, you're like, oh no, because you just hate seeing your idols go. But it was 124 goals in about 200 odd games, 205 games, roughly that.
That was a great record.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think it was last season was like 41, 42 goals.
Golden Boot winner.
Aye.
And when a player like him comes in, I always think about, partnerships. Who do you reckon was Charlie's partner? McGarvey?
Charlie Nicholas was Frank McGarvey was definitely with Charlie Nicholas.
Right. Yeah. Are we allowed to say who Brian McClare's partner was?
Well.
What was your thoughts on Maurice Johnston back then?
Well, I was always more of a McClare fan. But obviously when Johnston signed, it was great. With a fantastic strike force. We also had a big Rambo, Alan McInally, as well. But, when Mo Johnson leaving, it hurt more because they both left the same season. Because we lost in '87, we lost Murdo McLeod, Rambo, Johnson, and McClare. And that's
as well as Proven and McGrain.
Yeah, well, Proven was injured through an illness.
Yeah.
And so you're like, but of all them, what McLeod shocked me. I thought, well, I know he went to Germany, but because back when I was growing up, players didn't leave. You just thought they were a Celtic for life.
Yeah.
So it was, again, apart from your strikers, they tended the ones who went away. But no, Mo Johnson at the time, he was loved by the fans. But again, I was more of a McClare fan. It was just something. McClare was a better player, hands down. You could say Mo Johnson was maybe a more natural number 9, but McClare just had quality. He just oozed it, and he had the intelligence. He had that football brain. He could play really good football. He knew the right pass, the right moves. Whereas Mo Johnson was just more kind of in about it.
Yeah, definitely. And interestingly enough, when you're talking about players going to Germany, for example, so Murdo McLeod ends up in Germany, Alan McInally ends up at Bayern Munich, Stevie Archibald at Barcelona, Graham Souness at Sampdoria. I mean, Scottish football was healthy. This is what we're talking about. Our top players were playing in the top leagues, not just down south, but abroad as well. You read the old Scotland programmes from the 1980s where it lists the player with their team. And, our top players were playing at the top level.
Exactly. I mean, let's jump right back to the golden time, 67. Celtic winning European Cup. Celtic dominating European football. But internationally, 1974 World Cup. Scotland were actually the only, at the finals, I'm pretty sure this is right, Scotland were the only undefeated team for that whole finals. I think we drew 2 and lost. Sorry, we won 1 and drew 2. Who was it? Brazil, Yugoslavia, and I think we beat Zaire. I might be wrong, but I think that's what it was. And I think Germany went on to win it, but they actually lost one of their group games. So we were the only undefeated team in the finals in 74. And then in 78, folk laugh, but Scotland generally, as a nation, I know I'm a bit young for that, but at the time they did generally think we can win this because we did have a great team. We were still a force. But jump forward to what we're at now, it's 85, 86. No, it's just we're getting worse and worse and worse, unfortunately.
Going back to that revolution era.
The whole Souness revolution, that really, I mean, young Scottish talent couldn't get a chance. We're buying all these rubbish, not maybe rubbish, but I mean, run-of-the-mill foreign players who are no better than what our kids were. I mean, your Charlie Nicholas, your Paul McStays, your Brian McClares, I mean, these guys would have been swept away if that was the way things were done back then. So when Souness comes in, flashes the checkbook, it was a bad time. Obviously, it was good for them, but for Scottish football in general, no, it killed us.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it's only now
we're coming out the other end of it. Yeah, and a lot of that is down to the fact that we need to financially rely on the youth and the academies. That does the academies work? That's another discussion. But we've mentioned Paul McStay a few times. I remember reading, retrospectively reading newspaper reports that the likes of Inter Milan and Juventus were interested in McStay. You've seen him at his peak. Where could he have played? He could have played anywhere, couldn't he?
Anywhere. I mean, he was a proper box-to-box midfielder with goals. That's how I'd say. You would pick it up from the defence and he would just run. And he could run half that pitch. Either lay it off or do something great. But he was the energy, his touch, his skill. I mean, everything about him was just quality.
He was tough.
It was hardy.
You see a lot of these early games. I remember Celtic TV used to rerun a lot of the games, and I mean the tackles that were going in, and on a surface that wasn't as good as what we tend to play on. I mean, Perth wasn't great the other week, but the surfaces were like quagmires or swamps a lot of the time. I'm going to run through some of the high points of the 80s then.
Right.
85 100th Cup final.
Yep.
What's your memories of that?
I watched it on telly. Where did I watch it? I remember that actually the 84 one, which is a low, we lost that one to Aberdeen. But the 85, obviously the Davy Proven free kick And I'm pretty sure, what did Archie McPherson say? This is never before in the history of the Scottish Cup has a goal been scored direct from that's kind of strange, isn't it?
I know.
A goal's never been scored direct from a free kick until that moment.
Great bit of commentary.
Yep. And then it happens. And then obviously that Frank McGarvey lunging winning goal,
Oh, and the celebration.
Yeah. So
in the rain. What was your thoughts on McGarvey? Is he an underrated player when they look back now? Or only underrated if you didn't see him?
I don't know if underrated is the right way to say. It wasn't. When you compare it to Charlie Nicholas, that's kind of unfair. When you compare it with Brian McClare, I think that's unfair. Because they're two top. Well, at that time, when Nicholas' career went downhill very quickly, but at that time, at a young guy, Nicholas was up there, McClare was up there. So McGarvey was playing second fiddle to them too. So he's always going to be kind of like, he's not as good as them. But he was a great striker. He was a great striker. And
of course, he had gone down to Liverpool as well. Top talent is going down south and elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
But McGarvey, that was his last touch of the ball in a Celtic jersey.
That goal.
Incredible.
I know.
And then we follow that up with a league win that, is the fairy tale. It's the stuff of fairy tales.
I remember it well.
Everything about it. I mean, to my left, we've got the old replica jersey here, the Lime Love Street jersey, as it gets called. And there is a fairy tale element. We'll talk about the centenary year in a moment. But that season, right into the last day, it's cinematic. It's Hollywood style. We should never have won it.
It's never, but I mean, I think turn of the year, I think we were like, folk don't realise the run we went on actually, because I think we were quite a bit behind, after the new year. And I think it was almost like in the last 15, 16 games, we almost didn't drop a point. And we just kept on, we're just cut away. And I was always like, I always believed when 86, I was 14 when that last game was on. And I always believed, sometimes I thought, we can do this, we can score the goals. And I remember back then, I'd also have my radio on, and it's 3 o'clock, listen to the game, and then Celtic 4-0 up at half time. And I thought, come on, I was just like, come on, and it's still 0-0. And the longer it stayed 0-0, you're thinking, this can happen. And then, bang, a double whammy, and it was just surreal.
It was a very good Hearts side.
Yeah.
Look what they've done in Europe. Not at that time, but, a few years later, they get into the quarter-final of the UEFA Cup, where they meet Bayern Munich. They're a good side. A lot of good homegrown players, John Robertson, John Calhoun, who had been at Celtic.
Yeah, they're a good team.
Sandy Jardine with the old head, supplemented by a few others that they brought in. But I just thought at that time, that's the fairy tale element. That's Davy Hay got his league and his cup the previous season. We can crack on again. Having spoken to people who were part of the Davy Hay's teams, they always go on about the regrets in Europe because we had the Rapid Vienna fiasco.
Yeah.
And a lot of the players who were involved in that reckon, had we progressed, we were in for a shout.
We got a chance.
Yeah. What do you think?
Because was it 3-0 we won against them?
We
battered them, and then the bottle comes on. It doesn't even hit the guy, but he was doing like a sack of tatties. And it was just absurd to cancel the game out and then make us, where's it, Anfield? Old Trafford.
Yeah.
Make us play down there. I thought we were robbed. I mean, it was just harsh.
And they got into the final.
Did they? I didn't
Everton beat them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could have been our year.
Could have been. When he leaves, there was a forgettable season, 86, 87. But when Davy Hay leaves, and all those players that you mentioned leave, what's your thoughts as a Celtic fan?
Well, I remember, I'm pretty sure just after the New Year game, we were 9 points clear in the league. 9 clear, and this is when it was 2 points for a win. And we just collapsed. I don't know why. We just, like, game after game, would drop a draw, a defeat. And I think we actually ended up losing with 6 points.
Do you think the contract situation, well, a lot of the players eventually left, might have affected that?
Hard to say, innit? Don't know. Again, I was only getting to a couple of games maybe that season, not many, 1 or 2, I think. And the TV, games went on telly. You got it on a Saturday evening, you got to see the highlights. That was it. So you couldn't really see exactly what players were up to. For me anyway, at that stage. My first real season where I went to a good few games was actually the centenary year.
Oh, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So my first game is Tommy Burns' testimonial. We spoke about that beforehand. And we went on to have such a memorable season that I thought, is this what it's like being a Celtic fan. Because for years before that, I'd wanted to go to the games, but my dad didn't want to take me because that was his release. You know, work all week, go to the game with the uncles and the cousins and all the rest of it. Eventually, they relent and they start taking you, by which time you've been, dying to go and watch Celtic. And it's interesting because up to that point, you've only ever seen it on the telly. And then you go into this stadium and it's massive, and the pitch isn't as big as you think it is because it's so far away, and you're used to watching it on the TV. But we go into that centenary season, so Billy McNeill's my manager at this stage. He comes back in. What was your thoughts as a fan who had supported Celtic when Billy was around first time?
I was delighted when it was announced he was a new manager. I actually remember going to school because I remember at this point there's a lot of Rangers fans came out of nowhere. I mean, I'm in Dunoon. Dunoon's it's more Rangers than Celtic. It's about 3-1, I'd say. And but before Souness came around, a lot of the now Rangers fans, I'm probably getting hate them. I don't say too much, but they all support like Aberdeen or they support Dundee United. Even some support Celtic. And then I remember overnight when Souness came in, the whole bandwagon of supporting Rangers came back. So
bizarre.
Yeah, so I was really happy when they announced Billy McNeill was the new manager because as soon as he came in, after a kind of bad start as a manager, like the first few months gave us a big lead, but then they ploughed through and won it quite easily in the end. So I was delighted when I heard that Billy McNeill was the man. So I drew belief. And even as Billy McNeill says, that fairy tale aspect of Celtic, it was like, it's the centenary year, 100 years old. You kind of, deep down, you thought,
it's got to happen. And around that, you've got the, Glasgow Green with the big Celtic crest, the flower show, you've got the Wildcat, you've got the Celtic story, of course.
Yeah, what was it they're doing to the Clyde side? It was the flower, no.
People's Palace?
No, there's a thing. In 1988, was it Glasgow City? I can't remember what it was.
With a floral.
It was a big floral of Celtic thing down there. It was.
So everything was happening.
It was kind of
scenery. The front of the stadium, we've got a nice new fascia. Billy McNeill comes back. He needs to rebuild, but he starts bringing the players in. And interestingly enough, the last signing that Davy ever made was Mick McCarthy for, I think it turned out about 550 grand.
All right.
So there's an interesting picture, and it's Davy Hay as the manager with Roy Aitken and Mick McCarthy wearing the old style strip, which would have been the home jersey in 86, 87. And Mick McCarthy's a new signing. But obviously he starts playing under Billy McNeill. So interestingly enough, when you think of McCarthy, you think of McNeill because he's part of his team.
First season, yeah.
But he was. So Brian McClare was Billy McNeill's last signing as a Celtic manager. He never played under McNeill. The last signing under Davy Hay was McCarthy, who never played under Hay.
Yeah.
And of course, he needs to rebuild, so he brings in Stark and Morris and Walker. And then later on, he brings in McAvenny and Miller.
Yeah.
What a side.
Well, I mean, it used to always be the last weekend of March, so it's not March, August was always the Celtic Rangers games at that time. So I think it was the third game of the season when we played him at Celtic Park. Didn't Billy Stark score the winning goal?
1-0.
1-0, yeah. Aye. So that gives us the, right, we can do this. That belief. And when you get McAvenny comes in, and he was just like, so again, going from the hardship of the sadness of losing McClare, who cares about Johnson? But McClare and then McAvenny comes in. Another playboy kind of figure.
Iconic.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've always loved an icon, though.
Yeah.
And sometimes they are kind of bad boys, Charlie Tully in the 1950s.
Yeah.
He was a bit of a bad boy, And then you move up to Nicholas, playboy.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
McAvenny, playboy.
Johnston.
Yeah. We'll get back onto him.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fairy tale element, you start going to the games yourself as well, and we win the double. With hindsight, in retrospect, when you look at that, I think we let Billy McNeill down in the pre-season following that double. We really needed to strengthen at that point. When we're in the ascendancy, strengthen. And we failed to do it. The
board's just not doing things right. The big thing was they both didn't. They were Celtic family men, but not businessmen. Mm-hmm. They didn't know how to generate money. They didn't know how to grow Celtic as a brand, take us forward, and ultimately that's why we just went down the pan very quickly. Mm. Going back to the centenary year, as I said, it was the first year. I think we got to about 10 games that year. Again, for me, I had to get a part-time job, still a part-time job, but as soon as I was making money, that was me. Get a ticket for the game, go up from Dunoon. We would either sometimes be in the back of someone's cheaper van, 20 of us, all kind of crammed in, or sometimes we'd go with the Greenock clubs who'd take us across. But yeah, brilliant. And that was me, Jungle Boy, in the jungle for the first time, watching it. And in the jungle, in the middle, above your head was the gangplank where all the kind of commentators would walk down to the cameras, and I always remember, was it Jerry McNeill and a few others just chatting all the absurd things to them, so yeah, but that was just magic.
What was it about that team and late goals, scoring late winners?
I don't know. It was
a never say die attitude.
Yeah, I think it was just one of these things where that year it was meant to be. Mm-hmm. It was that thing where we're going to win this, no matter what. I don't know how many times we scored a last minute winner, but it must have been at least 10 times that season.
That was incredible.
Last minute bang. I can't even recall them now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The semi-final, the cup final. Incredible.
Yeah.
What I find incredible, you brought some of your curio, your Celtic gear along with you.
So my
first season ticket, shows it.
Right,
put it up in the camera. First season ticket.
Can you see that? Is that showing up?
Can you put it a wee bit closer? And that is 1989-90.
Yep.
First season ticket. How much was it?
£80. £80. And I think in that season there was only 6,000 season ticket holders. So I went up to Glasgow myself. As I said, I did working part-time, saved up my money. Right, that's it. I'm getting my first season ticket. And unfortunately, 89-90, that's the... it was the start of the bad years. It was a lot of... You kind of got... It's just... You just got... From the centenary year, the cup double, scoring was fantastic. It was the McAvenny in the final. That was magic.
Yeah.
And you thought, here we go. We kind of thought we were going to kick on from that, but not. As you say, McNeill wasn't backed, and then the team just went into this horrible spiral.
McNeill at that time, I thought what he was trying to do, he started buying players from other Scottish clubs as if he could maybe make a player out of them for nominal fees, and it just wasn't working. We got a tune out of, for example, Joe Miller, who had fallen away during the season. He comes back in just at the right time, shows a bit of form, gets back in the side. And then we're going to have to talk about this. So Rangers are going for the treble. We get into the Scottish Cup final. And we apparently re-sign Maurice Johnson.
Maurice Johnson. Actually, it's funny. I remember I was at the last game of that season. It was at Love Street away. And I've got a pal.
1-0.
I've got a pal, and he denies it to this day. But he bought a Mo's Back t-shirt because a lot of folk were walking around Mo's Back, and then obviously we know how that turned out.
The game. He was sitting in the stand with Davy Provan.
Aye, I know. That's the thing.
He travelled on the coach to the Scottish Cup final.
And it's funny, I knew someone from Dunoon who met him. This is Mo Johnson. This is before anything was announced. Met him in a restaurant in Glasgow. This is maybe, I don't know, June time. He hadn't signed for Rangers at this point. And the people who met him were actually Rangers fans, and Mo Johnson told them in that restaurant, he didn't tell me he's saying for Rangers, but he told them adamantly he wasn't saying for Celtic. So he was, again, Mo Johnson, he's not the sharpest tool in the box, so he was obviously moving off to folk. It was a punch in the face, wasn't it?
Well, with hindsight, you look at the trajectory of Celtic.
Well, that was it.
And that was a massive part of that.
Because we thought, right, the whole Mo's Back to Judas hatred. When I remember being in the jungle for his first game he played against us, I'm telling you, you could feel the hatred. Because in the jungle, for all you people who don't know the jungle, the back half, there was no terrace bars. It was just steps. So you'd be back, you know what I mean? And when Mo Johnson first ran out in a Rangers stop, the whole jungle swooped down, and that whole game, he didn't once come near that trackside of the jungle, not once.
I mean, I just don't think people these days maybe realise the intensity of that situation, where he speaks to Roy Aitken on international duty. He tells him he wants to come back. Aitken speaks to McNeill. The deal is done as far as we, as fans, are concerned. Mm-hmm. The club know the deal's not done.
Aye.
They know it's not done. And it goes back to this incompetence that you mentioned before. I have no doubt that your Kellys, White and Grant, they were born into Celtic. Mm-hmm. They were Celtic fans.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't think they were the competency on a business level to compete at that stage. I mean, football was ever evolving and ever changing. Before you knew it, we had to bring our stadium up to scratch.
Yeah.
They had no way of bringing in the finances.
Yeah.
But I also think that in a scenario like that, they quite easily could have been bullied or hoodwinked. And that appears to have been what's happened here. The biggest issue is we've paraded him as a Celtic signing.
Aye.
He's got the jersey on. And I mean, that is amateur hour, isn't it?
Totally. I think Billy McNeill was the one, quick, chuck the Celtic over his jumper. I think Billy McNeill was pushing.
Almost as if you can't back out now.
Aye. I think McNeill probably knew the deal wasn't done, but he was trying to put the pressure on Mo to say, right, you've got to sign now. Mm-hmm. But obviously it didn't happen. Let's go back. I just forgot, just because I've got the ticket slip here. In the 88-90 season, when Rangers were going for the treble, Hampden Park. Well, I was at that game, thankfully. The infamous when Roy Aitken kicks the ball out, and then he just quickly takes a quick throw.
Yes.
Ref says play on. Joe Miller, bang, stop the treble. And here we go. I've got that ticket stub right here.
How much was it to get in it back then?
Can you see that?
£4.
£4.
Brilliant.
Final at Hampden.
Brilliant.
Yeah. May 20th, 1989.
Beautiful sunny day. Like you said, it was actually Bob Valentine's last game as a ref.
Yeah.
It was Aitken and John Brown on the touchline. Aitken throws it. It gets moved on. Bad pass back by Gary Stevens. Wejo nips in.
Slipped in.
But he, like you say there, he'd finished the season off strongly because he had scored against St Mirren at Love Street 1-0. The week before that, we beat Hibs 1-0. Mm-hmm. Joe Miller scores the goal. So we go into the final, and another 1-0 goal scored by Joe Miller. Again, after that, there was a feeling that Mo was in the building. We've won a cup. We'll go again. The Mo deal breaks down, and Billy McNeill goes into the transfer market. He's busy in the transfer market. He brings in Darius Jakonowski, Paul Elliott, Mike Galloway. Mm. So he's spending money there. He's spending money, and all three of those players, when you think about it, were good signings. I mean, Paul Elliott, right? He had played down in England, but we signed him from Pisa. England B international. Developed into a fantastic defender for Celtic. Mike Galloway at that stage, let's not forget what he had been doing.
Did we sign him? I was going to say Hearts, wasn't it? We signed him
Hearts, £500,000. Mm-hmm. He was a major part in that Hearts team who done so well in Europe.
Yep.
And we'll get back onto Mike Galloway goals in Europe in a second. And then Jakonowski, undoubted talent. I always look back disappointedly on his career at Celtic. It should have been better. But did you think at that point we could still compete? Because we were spending fairly big money.
I think as a fan, you always, no matter how bad the previous season finished, you always had that belief, right, next season. Mm-hmm. Next season. I think that's true up until maybe 92, 93, then you kind of lost belief.
You realise that gap is just getting wider.
Wider and wider. And it wasn't just that. I mean, we were like the 4th or 5th team in Scotland, as in quality-wise, mm-hmm. Result-wise. You're going to places like Airdrie or Falkirk and
Motherwell.
And
getting beat. Never a given that you're going to get a win.
And I just remember coming away thinking, again, what's going on? So it was a tough time. I mean, today's fans, the younger fans, don't know how lucky this one era. I mean, if you've grown up, and say since the Martin O'Neill era, apart from a few wee
blips,
it's been total Celtic domination. Total domination. I mean, I always call it, I know joke for a bit here, but I always call it the Larson years. Folks say the O'Neill years, to me, it's the Larson years. Because it goes from 97, 98 to 2004.
Yeah.
But that was fantastic.
It was. When you're talking about us going into this dark period, and it was a dark period, it was 9 seasons of domination by Rangers. We won the 89 Cup. We didn't win another trophy until 95. And we celebrated the 10 and 60s. You know, that's how bad we were, right? We beat St. John's.
We won it once, didn't we?
I, at that time, was into, as I said to you before, I used to buy the Match magazine, Shoot, Royal Rover, Celtic View. When I went to the game, I bought a programme. I started buying fanzines at that stage. They became massive as a Celtic fan for me, and in the movements that then happened with the board being ousted.
Yeah.
Were you a fanzine man?
I read them. I wasn't like right into them, but I mean, I liked the quirkiness of it. I liked the humour. You know, there's a lot of wee kind of jokey bits, but also serious stuff too. Mm-hmm. And actually, just surprisingly,
as if by magic.
Just by magic. I've got an old. It's called Once a Tim fanzine, and I think you told me it's actually.
That's Matt's.
Yep.
Matt McGowan's. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And this came out, I think maybe Tommy Coyne's playing. The date's not on it, which is annoying. But I think it was about 92, 93 era, because Brian Dempsey had just been sacked on the board. Mm-hmm. And there's a really good interview.
The interviews were excellent in the Once a Time.
In here as well, yeah. Sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was, so that's kind of like the fanzines back in the day. There's a picture of good old Brian McNeill. Yeah.
But as I say, that they're announcing another interview. The interviews were excellent. I've got some back copies of that and Not the View, and I still go through them to this day. I mean, as you say, the humour, excellent. Yeah. 1 point. Celtic fans creating content back then was a wee bit different. Still doing it to this day. That dark period, as a Celtic fan, there were moments where you thought it would never end.
Oh, totally. I remember thinking, especially, it's probably just before Fergus took over, but when the old board. See, the thing is, see now, like, we found out how close we came to going bust. Mm. You didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. I thought, no chance. I think that's kind of what happened when Rangers went out of business. Their fans were in denial. This can't happen.
Can't happen. How can it possibly happen?
But yeah,
so it did.
So yeah, because I remember obviously when McNeill got fired, and then Brady came in. And again, we had Brady, okay, all optimistic. Total disaster, you know. The signings were off. I mean, was it Wayne Biggins, Carl Muggington? What's happened here? So yeah, so you're going into games and Rangers were just battering us. I mean, I used to dread watching, you know, when we played them, because you just knew, what's it today? It was horrible.
Meanwhile, whilst we are buying a lower calibre player, we are buying top quality players.
Yeah, but and now we know not their money. You know, who paid for that? Yeah. Taxpayer. Us.
I know.
We paid for them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the same hand, the bank were saying to us, no, we're going to put you out of business. Well, to them, how much you want? Just kept on going.
It was a situation that I don't think's ever been fully explored, and the people who were involved haven't been fully punished. We're in a situation now where David Murray, if he so desired, could buy a football club in Scotland tomorrow and start running it.
Because he's never been prosecuted or charged with misconduct or anything. I mean, I guess the guy should be in jail, really, for fraud. I mean, people now in a business, if you commit fraud to a level that's high enough, you're in jail. Mm-hmm. I feel nothing's happened to him. That's
interesting.
You know?
At that stage, you've called it the Henrik years, and I get where you're coming from. There's a kind of like, when you look back, people think Fergus McCann took over and everything was rosy after that. Well, it took a few seasons, didn't it?
The Fergus McCann, see, some people will in the comments will say, oh, how dare you criticise Fergus? He saved us, which he did. But at the time, it wasn't a popular figure, even among Celtic fans, because he had this really strong business head on. I mean, he would fight the corner for Celtic, but at the same time, the stories when a player would or give a fan a jersey, Fergus would charge them the money. But hospitality, he stopped the lines, free entry to Celtic Park.
Yeah.
I seen the thing your post the other day. Sean Connery, he stopped Sean. He said to Sean Connery, "You have to pay," and that's why Sean Connery ended up going. Murray was quick to jump in there. Oh, well,
he saw the PR.
Aye, exactly.
Potential,
come here. So for those things, and he came in and he was telling us what we can and can't sing. And for us fans back then, our backs go up a wee bit. You're thinking, look, okay, you've come in, you've taken over the club, but you can't buy us fans. You can't.
Remember, he was going to change the crest.
There's a lot of things he was going to change.
Yeah.
He thought he's all powerful at first. Now, I don't want to upset anyone who's Fergus fan. I'm not saying...
I'm a massive Fergus fan. Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, obviously now in hindsight, and looking back, it goes go back to when the flag, when we stopped at 10. I just thought it was ill-advised for Fergus to do that because we just stopped at 10. We were elated. Next day, Vim's gone. And the fans were gutted. Absolutely gutted. And for us, the fans, I was there the day, but I would never boo Celtic at a game, never. But I understood why a section did. Mm-hmm. And it's because Fergus didn't win us that championship. Vim did. Yes, Fergus saved the club and he built this fantastic stadium. Yes. But on that day, I was like a wee raw nerve with the fans. Mm-hmm. Just for him to kind of take the accolade of, well, I'm going to unfurl the flag in his speech. He should have just stood in the background, and it would have been fine. Because then the media had a field day.
Giving them ammunition then.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But that's why fans, again, going back to the treatment of the Lisbon Lions, the treatment of all our ex-Celtic players, charging players, and obviously the media loved that. So they're spinning that in the media. Yeah. And us fans, we're hearing it. So and then telling us what songs we can and can't sing. So yeah, so obviously some fans at the time were not Fergus fans. But now 30 years on, almost.
I know.
You can look back and think, wow, thank God for Fergus, because if he didn't come in, the bank wouldn't have hesitated to have sent by
8 minutes.
Yeah.
8 minutes
yeah.
from receivership. Now, we can't jump from Fergus taking over to Wim Jansen because there was a period of time in
Tommy Burns
where the late great Tommy takes over, and he starts to build a team that plays in the greatest traditions of Celtic because it's an entertaining team, and he brings in players. And again, history changes perception of certain players, but he brings in players like Van Hooijdonk and Di Canio and Tom and Cadet. We've still got Paul McStay. We've still got, he brings in players like Phil O'Donnell and Jackie Mack. Excellent team to watch. Ultimately, we didn't win the league.
Yeah.
Do you see that team as a failure? I mean, we know we won the Scottish Cup, or was it a bridge that we needed?
A bridge. It was a bridge. It was when Burns came in for the first time in 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. You could see us progressing. Mm-hmm. You had belief and hope again. We were playing really good football, exciting football. The trouble was, we just didn't get the balance right at the back. We were fantastic going forward, but we'd lose silly goals.
Tommy never had a great goalie.
No, I think in the history of Celtic, I think that's Martin Neal's biggest flaw.
Yeah,
never seen a top keeper.
It's strange to say now, and I know that obviously we'll get to this because last season being the anomaly, we've had a procession of really, really solid goalkeepers.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, couldn't buy a goalie.
No.
And I think that Tommy Burns' team suffered from that. And the fact that we did tend to go top heavy, so we were focusing on the flair players.
We were always exposed when we lost possession.
Yeah.
So we just lost cheap goals constantly, which would, what was it, the second season when we lost one game?
First season back at Celtic Park.
But all those draws.
Yeah.
Aye. If we had, we came so close, but I think with Tommy, when Tommy finally was let go, I was actually thought that was right. I thought it was right because the season before the last season, before we signed Di Canio, because we signed Cadet the season before, and I always maintain, see if we'd got Cadet 3 months earlier, we would have won the league that year.
We should have.
Exactly, I know. But I honestly think when we signed Di Canio, we lost that team. That team, what we had the previous year, because it became the Canio show. So it was also like, give the ball to Di Canio, give the ball to Di Canio. Now, sometimes he did great things, scored great goals, but as a team, because I think in the end, we didn't really push them that hard, did we?
No.
In
that single season that Di Canio played.
Yeah.
Because, history tells us that we didn't do well.
Yeah.
You've got that thing in your mind about the entertaining style of Di Canio. You think back, there's no doubt he was a talented player. But the team ethic, I think you're right. I think we lost a bit of that.
Yeah, definitely. So when the news came out that Burns has Tommy's been let go, me personally, I thought it was the right move. I just felt it was too emotional. Tommy was too emotionally attached to stopping at the time the 9, because the 9 was a big one at the start. Don't let him get 9, and then they got the 9, and then it was a brave and bold move by wee Fergus, right enough, to let Tommy go and bring in Mr. Wim Jansen from Japan. No one had heard of him. The media slaughtered him. The second worst thing to hit Japan since the nuclear war. Well, or the end of World War II. But again, my gut feeling was always positive about Wim Jansen. This guy's a Dutch ex-World Cup player. He'll know.
Cup winner, yeah.
He'll know how to play a team. That's what I thought. He'll know how to play a team. And he did. All right. Again, it's very similar to Big Ange. Awful start. Lose our first 2 games. It's the infamous, Larson's first game at Easter Road, and he gives the ball away and Chick Chaney scores a winner. But then, I think, I remember we lost at Ibrox. I remember Goff running away.
1-0 game, yeah.
Doing his 10 symbol, high-fiving, thinking that was it. But then we actually went on an 8-game winning spree. We actually won 8 games in a row, leading up to the was it the Coca-Cola Cup final?
Yes.
At that time. And then we won that. And at that point you thought, this is happening. But then Rangers were starting to drop points in games you thought, wow, they're feeling the pressure. They're feeling the pressure, and we were getting that momentum going. I mean, it just got better and better and better
See, when you look back on that, like you say, poor start. There was a tricky start this season.
Yeah.
You've got somebody coming in from Japanese football. Lo and behold, we've got that again.
Yeah.
He's got his talismanic player who knew all about Wim Jansen, knew all about him and his contract. But we've got Kyogo now. We've got that League Cup win, which galvanised the team.
Gives you belief.
Give you the belief. Can you see the similarities this season?
I go back to the Centennial year when Bill McNeill says that there's a fairy tale about this club. Touchwood. I'm pretty sure we're going to do it. I think Scottish Cup we might slip up because we didn't win the treble, back then. But yeah, I think two games is nothing. I mean, we had a 2-game advantage almost in 2005. We beat Rangers Ibrox and we threw it away. So with 19 games to go or 18 games, a 2-game ratio is nothing. And we'll strengthen. I think they've got to sell players, surely. But we'll strengthen, we'll get better. And I think this shut down now, Ange can mould the team better, have time on the part with the players. I think we'll do it. Yeah,
I like that optimism because I share that. I want to focus. We know what happened. We stopped the 10, smell the glove. Some tremendous performances that season from the likes of Paul Lambert, Craig Burley, let's not forget. But the one player that you mentioned before, Henrik Larson. Now, he is the modern day icon. We've been talking about icons since you started watching Celtic. Is he the finest you've seen in the hoops?
Oh, by a mile. By a mile. I mean, he's born in 71, so I'm happy to say we're both the same age. But oh yeah, I mean, I was lucky. I was at every game more or less in the Henrik years, and yeah, I mean, anytime he touched the ball, you just kind of knew something great was going to happen. And it wasn't just his goals. I mean, it wasn't just like a penalty box striker. He would link up play. He was so unselfish, but his movement, his touch, his finishing, he was so strong in the air. I mean, for a kind of slightly shorter guy, my God, he could leap and just stay there. I mean, the 2 goals in Seville.
I know.
Fantastic. I mean, that's world class. I mean, the term world class gets thrown around. Henrik, I will say this. At the time of Henrik's time at Celtic, in his peak years, I would say he was probably the best striker in the world, to me. And I'd also say he was probably in the top 5 of the best players in the world, like in any position. That's how good he was.
See, I think that's interesting because if he was doing it, and this is just the generic football thing at this moment in time, if he was doing it for Man United at that stage,
or Barcelona,
more people would have shared your view.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but because it's Scottish football and there's always this view that we're a backwater in a tin pot league.
When you get to, strangely enough, 50, which is, to me, it doesn't feel like 50 years, but you do. You see a lot of football. You see a lot of players. So you know. I mean, you know a good player or a bad player or an average player, and you know when someone's got it at the highest level. And Henrik Larson was just...
If you're talking world class then, Ewan, do you think there's only a handful that have played in your lifetime since the period that we've been discussing here that you would put in that bracket, Celtic players?
As in, like, world class?
Yeah.
Paul McStay. Danny McGrain. As world class, I'd probably say that's it. From my period of watching, I mean, there's been fantastic players, but to say you're world class,
that's the extra bit, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Lubo's a god, right? But we got him in his latter years, but he's still fantastic. He's still one of the great entertainers I've ever seen.
Well, I was going to say to you there that Wim Jansen brings Larson in. He knows that there's a glitch, not a glitch as such, but it turned out for a glitch in terms of firing that allowed us to get him for a snip. 750 grand. We were good for Larson as well at that stage of his career. He was good for us. But he also played under Joe Venglos and John Barnes before McNeill comes in. And we're talking about wee blips. I see John Barnes in that season as a blip, even though we win the League Cup eventually after Barnes is away.
Yeah.
I don't view the Venglos season as a blip because he laid the foundations by bringing in guys like Lubo, Mialbe, Viduka. So when I look at Venglos, I see it's a bit of a transitional season, but not an absolute failure.
We had a terrible start on that season under Venglos.
Yeah.
And I remember at the game when we signed Moravchik, and like, you know, in the media, who's this old so-and-so?
We should have signed Spencer.
And I think it was Dundee, I think it was, playing Dundee. I might be wrong on that, but I think it was Dundee we played in Moravchik's first game at Celtic Park, and I was sitting in my chair, and I'm sure they won 6-1. But Moravchik, he was like the club captain. He ran the show. He was hitting the balls outside the foot. He was just, and we were all like, first game in, we were like, wow, this guy's unreal. What a player. So from his very first day, and this is the thing, talent's talent. Talented players don't need time to settle. They just do it because they've got it, and Lubo had it. You know, and then that game against Rangers, 5-1, when he scores those 2 goals, you see him kind of like looking lost.
I know.
He's like, what the hell is this? You know?
So when you look at that game, this is a discussion that's came up a few times on the podcast. Mark Burchell come on as a sub and scored, right? Now, we talk about players coming through the ranks and in the academy that make an impression on the Celtic side. And it's great to see when you look at that Celtic team now, you've got Ralston playing, you've got Welsh playing, you know, Mikey Johnston, James Forrest, Callum McGregor. We have failed for a long time to produce a goal-scoring striker. Now, we talked about the dark old days. We had a goal scorer in Jerry Craney. Didn't work out the way we kind of thought. He scored a
It was okay,
goals.
but it was still a downgrade for me, going from Nicholas to McClare to McAvenny. Even though technically Nicholas wasn't homegrown. McClare was signed from Motherwell, but he's still a young kid. And I know McAvenny was not a young kid, but the quality of striker. Then Jerry Craney comes in, and he was like, he's okay. You know what I mean? We were so used to great strikers, and I know Jerry Craney came through the ranks, so that you have to give him that. But he was all right.
Did you expect Burchell to be the next in a long line of goal-scoring Celts? I mean, he got off to a decent start. He got that record. He scored a hat-trick in Europe.
I was wary because of... I'm sure Simon Donnelly was in first the team, and they were saying, now don't get me wrong, I thought Simon Donnelly had a great few years with Celtic, especially the centenary year. Him and Jackie McNamara up that flank together were great. But they're saying Simon Donnelly was to be the new Ken Dalglish, And then, well, obviously that wasn't true. So when Birchall came in, again, you kind of reserve yourself. You could see he was small.
They were comparing him to Owen, weren't they? The Scottish Michael Owen.
With the pace. He had that pace. And he was all right. But just didn't.
And nothing since. People mention Maloney. He was never an out-and-out striker for Celtic. You know, who else has come through the ranks, I mean, and been a goal scorer for Celtic?
Not many, is there?
No, not many. When we talk about the Venglos, we've got to talk about the Barnes era. Disaster.
Oh. Which strangely enough, started off fantastic with a great start. I think obviously the turning point in that season was when Henrik had his leg break in France.
Did you think at that moment? I remember I wasn't at the game. I remember watching it on the telly, and I thought that was his shin guard that was kind of poking
at first. Aye, and then the reality sunk in,
and then you just think he's finished.
I remember I couldn't even watch the rest of the game. I was devastated. Like, you know what I mean? I was almost in tears. Like,
you actually thought he was finished.
Aye.
It was too serious. We've seen some really bad leg breaks in British football, you know, where legs shouldn't be moving like that, and it was one of the ones. And I also remember that night, Tebele was brilliant. It was the best game he ever played for Celtic at centre half. Oliver Tebele.
Did we get a draw that night? I can't remember.
1-0.
When was that?
1-0 they beat us.
Oh, they beat us 1-0.
Aye.
Again, after the leg break, I just switched off.
Exactly. It was sickening, wasn't it?
Exactly.
It was sickening. So we're in a situation there where the Barnes era, if you want to call it that, is a forgettable one. But there are elements that do us a turn later on. So Stan Petrov comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I'll also go. Petrov, again, his first season, he says it himself, he was overweight, new country, couldn't speak the language. He was just chucked in the deep end. And at the time, the club...
Out of position at times.
Aye, and the club didn't really take care of him. Because he says he had to go to some worker van to learn English.
To learn the lingo.
Yep. Yeah. So, but when you got Larson, you got Moravchik. Viduka was a bad apple. As great a player as he was, and he was a fantastic player. I mean, I remember we went up to Pittodrie. Was it 7 goals we scored? 6 goals?
Yeah.
And Larson and Viduka just had a riot.
Oh, they were amazing.
Had a riot.
That team, like you were saying there was elements. So you watch the 7-0 game against Aberdeen, and you've got Berkovic, Moravchik, Larson, Viduka.
Good.
All turning it on. Very, very entertaining. But of course, people remember the Inverness game.
Yeah.
There was a few games leading up to that. There was a game where we were beating Hearts 2-0 and we threw away the 2-goal lead.
3-2, yeah.
So the writing was on the wall. Having spoken to some of the players involved in the squad at that point, the players didn't believe in Barnes. There was a break, it might have been Portugal, but there was a winter break, and he was very much a manager who didn't trust his senior players. So Stubbs and Tommy Johnson and Craig Burley and others go for a lunch, and Barnes has warned them all, no drinking. But he follows them. He follows them into town. They just want a bit of, you know.
Yeah.
And he walks into the restaurant once they've ordered drinks, and he picks up Tommy Johnson's, what he thought might have been vodka, and he actually picks it up and drinks it. John Barnes.
Yeah.
It turns out to be lemonade.
Yeah.
And he looks a bit daft. But the players are looking at him going,
thinking,
seriously?
Yeah.
You don't trust us?
That's why it's so important. The players back the manager. I mean, any successful team, they believe in the manager, and the manager believes in them, and there's that trust and unity. So when John Barnes lost that's when... Again, I think Larson breaking his leg was a major factor why it all went wrong, but Barnes' management skills, you know, he wasn't a people person to the players, and then the Inverness Cali game just sparked. And let's be fair, we were all shocked and horrified when we lost that game, and we were at home, and we were happy that Barnes was sacked. Well, I was.
Following day, You're thinking to yourself, this has to change, this has to go. I also remember speaking to people around about Fergus at that time. His final message to Alan McDonald was, do not employ Kenny Dalglish.
I heard it before,
and he went and done it.
Yeah.
The last season is obviously the interim after Barnes goes, and then we get the real deal. I'll never forget O'Neill had been doing the punditry, and I remember watching him and thinking to myself, he takes no prisoners. He doesn't suffer fools.
I remember, was it the 2000? Was it a Euros in the 2000 But it was Martin O'Neill and McCoist in the studio.
Yep.
And McCoist was talking nonsense, I think, and Martin O'Neill just slapped him down, like just didn't take his nonsense. I can't remember what he says, but it was brilliant. You know, you just knew Martin O'Neill was so intelligent, so much sharper than McCoist was. He just made McCoist look stupid. You know, that was my first memory of him, really.
See, when we look at the managerial appointments, that was one of the most blockbuster appointments we had ever made. Now, I know that when we appointed Jock Stein, he'd done well with Dunfermline. Mm-hmm. He went to Hibs. He was showing promise at Hibs, and he comes to Celtic and he fulfills his potential.
Yeah,
big time.
Yeah.
But you look at other managers, Davy Hay, he's in his 30s.
Ex-players, basically.
You know, ex-players. Mm-hmm. You know, we broke the mould with Liam Brady, it didn't work. Yeah. We broke the mould with John Barnes, it didn't work. We had a few overseas coaches. Wim Jansen, it worked really well. Joe Venglis, certainly.
Almost worked.
But O'Neill was blockbuster. He was a massive appointment.
Yeah.
You looked at O'Neill at that stage and thought, he's going to manage Man United one day. When we got him, you had that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, and the Irish connection. You know, he was Irish. He obviously from a Celtic background, so it just
he had a Celtic state of mind.
He certainly did. So he ticked all the boxes, and but he was humble as well. He didn't come in saying, "I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that." I mean, the first thing he says, "I'm promising, I'll do my best."
Yep.
To bring success to this football club. He didn't come and say, I'm going to bring back this and that. He just said, I'll do my best. So he was very humble in the way he approached it. And he also said, straight away, Rangers were the benchmark. Mm-hmm. Rather than try and belittle them and try and talk them down. And he's like, no, that's the team we've got to aspire to be as good as and better.
When you consider the season we had 21-point deficit.
At the end of it, yeah.
And we go out and win a treble. I mean, O'Neill was a massive part of that. Larson was a massive part of that. He inherited Moravcik, he inherited Petrov, he inherited a Champions League winner in Paul Lambert. But how good were his signings? When you look at his record in transfer, particularly in that first season.
Well, the biggest and the best was Sutton, because him and Larson...
He was a wee bit more to the point when he got interviewed. He wanted to put Rangers back in their place.
Aye. Yeah. And I mean, I remember because it was didn't Chelsea pay 10 million for him?
It was.
I think it was 10.
Yeah.
And then we got him for 6 a year later, which just thought, that's pretty good business. Because you don't become a bad player, because he was fantastic for Norwich. Is that right?
He was.
No. Blackburn after that.
You remember the Norwich team? Remember they beat Bayern Munich in Europe?
I can't remember that exactly, but wow. Yeah.
He was part of that side.
Yeah,
so when he went to Blackburn, I'd need to check this. I think he was £5 million.
Right.
And then he goes to Chelsea for 10 million.
Mm-hmm. So basically, we got him at a right good cut deal price. Mm-hmm. And then he comes up. First game that season was away to Dundee United.
Yeah.
And Larson's just back from his leg break. So Larson scores the first goal. And then it was the last minute, wasn't it?
See, this is really interesting that you say that, Ewan, right? Because we covered this game on one of our channels, Scream of Celica, fairly recently. And Kevin Graham, the presenter of that show, would have put his mortgage on it being a last-minute goal. But there was about 20 minutes to go.
Was it?
So it's interesting how the mind plays tricks on you.
Also, that was last minute.
Mm-hmm. I remember it vividly. Aye. Dundee United wearing the Dundee Hibs tops with the green. Celtic wearing the yellow. After the game, O'Neill saying, I knew Larson was good. I didn't know quite how good he was. Aye. I remember all that.
Yeah.
But your mind does play tricks on you.
It's funny.
The signings were excellent. And of course, we bring in Neil Lennon, who becomes a massive part in my Celtic supporting life. And he comes in and, you know, it was a perfect fit for O'Neill's team as well. Took a while to get him. Mm-hmm. We wanted him a lot earlier than we got him. When you look back on that kind of spend, and we know that the following season Hartson comes in for big money, we're never going to see that again. You know, because Alan Thompson, big transfer.
It was about 5, wasn't it?
Just Valharan, big fee, big wages. Chris Sutton, Neil Lennon. The following season, Hartson comes in. We're even buying guys in who they're coming in from the English league, so they're on big wages. Like Magnus Hedman was on big wages. Steve Guppy, big wages. We're never going to have that again, are we? We did back him.
Not while the format of the game stays as is, like we're in the Scottish game. But I think the future of football is going to go to Europe. This talk of going down south, nah. I don't even want that. I wouldn't want to be part of the English league, because then we lose our identity. But if you expand the Europe, which they're doing now already, you know, with the Conference League, expand Europe. So make Europe half your season, And then you're going to get much, much more money. If we could start getting like 50, 60 million a year guaranteed from TV money from Europe, then yeah, we can get back to those days of signing better players and big wages.
And what happens? We reach our third European final. See, people think, or maybe a lot of people downplay Celtic's achievements in the 60s and 70s. And they might see 67 as being a one-off. Yeah, we know it was a one-off in terms of wins. But I keep saying this, 64 to 76, 12 seasons, 9 European quarterfinals in 12 seasons.
Yeah.
That is astonishing. And then we talk about the 1980 game with Doyley and McCluskey scoring against Real Madrid. We go away to the Bernabeu, they beat us 3-0. We never progressed in Europe beyond Christmas until O'Neill came in.
Aye.
Astonishing.
It was a long, as I was saying before, the Europe became like a pipeline, a sort of pipe dream. Like, it was so long ago, you just thought that was days of old. Mm-hmm. And then for O'Neill to come in and was it not the Seville year?
Seville 2000.
Well, that was the first time we actually did qualify for after Christmas. Yeah.
And I remember the disappointment to get knocked out against Basel.
Basel, that's right.
Val,
yeah, well,
depending on what you want to call
yeah.
them. And then this fairy tale season. And it's interesting now because people say, no, we don't celebrate failure, but Seville was about more than just, the final, wasn't it? It was the whole run.
I remember after the game in Seville, I still felt a pride. I was gutted that we didn't win, but I felt a pride. I was still proud of the achievement of getting there, the whole being in the city, seeing the fans there. The only person I really felt good for was Henrik,
I know,
because he deserved that.
Again,
I still feel for him to this day, because us fans, we were happy that we got there. I would have loved to have won it, of course, but Henrik, he was the one to get those 2 goals as well in the final. Just unfortunately, we came up against a very, very good Porto team. I mean, they won the Champions League the next year with the exact same team. Mm-hmm. So any other team, that would have been ours. And
that was the early stages of the special one, because he became the special one. He did.
Aye.
Regardless of what people think of him and what's happened to his career.
I don't mind him. I know a lot of folk hate him. I think he's a character. And you need characters in the game sometimes. But the Seville year, I was very lucky because I actually managed to get to quite a few of the away days. Mm-hmm. I got to, I think, what was my first one? I was away to Stuttgart in Germany. I got to that one. And I managed to get a ticket for Anfield as well. 3,000 of us back down there. That John Barnes, just remember that going in, just ballistic. And then obviously Seville itself. I got in very late in Seville. So when I walked in, the stadium was already full. And I was just like, my God. There's like 3/4 all Celtic. It was phenomenal.
Do you think in your lifetime you'll see another final with Celtic and another European final?
Yes, I do. I mean, actually, I'm not being funny here, but I think we've got a great year this year in the Conference League. I mean, Betis and Leverkusen, they're better than any other team left in the conference. Mm-hmm. So why not? I think generally we're not ready for the obviously Champions League and the Europa League. No, that's still above us. But Conference League, why not?
25th of May this year.
Good date.
Yeah. Fairy tale.
Yeah.
O'Neill, for me, was magnificent for Celtic. And I look upon his time there, and I think we could have even got more. Do you think after Seville, in terms of the backing, we know that the money that was ploughed into that team previously was vast. Do you think he was sufficiently backed after Seville? Or do you think as a club we had to reel ourselves back in?
As a club, I think, well, you look what happened to Rangers, how they went bust. Our board looked at our figures and they thought, we can't sustain this. You can't get the debt going up and up and up. And that's why they brought in Peter Lawwell. Mm-hmm. Peter Lawwell's job was to save money, cutbacks, basically, which unfortunately in the football side, it's going to weaken you. And we did. I mean, Scottish Tracking did wonders, actually, especially in Europe, considering we were selling our best players, we're having to do a bit of bargain basement signings. But see, he did all right.
He did incredibly well.
Yeah.
Before we move on to Strachan, though, Henrik Larson, you brought him a memento.
Yes.
Show us this.
Well,
put it up on the camera.
Right. Well, the story goes. It's a kind of funny picture. I'll just show it. Can you see that?
We can, yeah.
Can you see?
There's a guy topless, right?
A big crazy guy.
He's about 4 or 5 in from the right, and he's very familiar.
Yep. Yes, that's actually me. It's Henrik Larsson's last ever game for Celtic in the cup final. Was it Dunfermline?
Yeah.
He scores that goal. I'm down the front corner there. He runs down, screaming. That picture there, he's actually just screaming generally at the fans. But when he scores the second goal, I actually managed to break through to the wee gate, right trackside, and Henrik comes right over. And he's like, from me to you right now, eye to eye, we both had that moment of screaming into each other's eyes. And I tell you, I will savour that forever. To know
there's an image of that one.
I know.
It could be.
Well, I remember Sky Sports, and you see it. If you ever see watch Sky Sports, when you see Henrik scoring the second goal, you see him going and you see him looking at someone. It's me. But unfortunately, the camera doesn't. You don't see me. But that's the moment I'll always think. Henrik's last goal, and I wonder if he thinks back to that day, like his memory.
It's in his mind's eye.
My last goal for Celtic, that moment. Well, that was.
No, you should think he does anyway.
I'd hope so.
The thing is, doing research myself, I figured out that the amount of photographers in the stadium that day, cup final, right?
There must be some
image.
There must be somewhere. Unfortunately, I've never seen it.
Yet.
I've never seen it.
Not yet. You're right about Strachan, though. Absolutely spot on about Strachan. There was a downsizing process, and the example I always use is we had brought in Craig Bellamy previous season on loan, option to buy. The option was £5 million. So Strachan wanted to marry up Bellamy and Hartson up top. He had experience of the two players at Coventry City. He wanted that to be strike force, but it meant that was his budget.
Yeah.
So he goes out, he buys Boric initially on loan, he buys Nakamura, and he buys Magic Zuraski. So that's the kind of job Strachan was doing, rather than going for Bellamy. I would have loved to have seen Bellamy.
Yeah, as we all would, because he was great.
But he goes and he plays it a wee bit more safe. We get the iconic Nakamura out of that, the iconic Boric out of that. And Zuraski, who, you know what, he was prolific enough, right?
He was all right.
He was fine, right?
Yeah.
He was absolutely fine. But that was the kind of job that Strachan was doing. And he was always doing that in his time at Celtic. Yet, he gets us 3 league titles in a row, 2 last 16 in Europe, and the Champions League.
Did you get to the game against Man U?
I can tell you exactly where it was, but I'm not going to repeat it on the show.
Right.
But I wasn't at the game. I was watching it though.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, I was there, and the funny thing was, obviously, my seat at the time was just in line in the north stand, lower, quite close to the back, in line with the 6-yard line in the box, and so the Nakamura is lining up. So the goal goes in, and it's bedlam, as you know. Boric saves the penalty, last minute penalty. It was more bedlam, but we didn't even realise. I remember not even realising we'd qualified until walking out, and folk were saying, "Yeah, I think we've actually qualified because there's still a game to go." And so that was an even bigger bonus to beat Man U and to qualify at the same time. That was some night. I mean, that's probably one of the top nights. And you're going back a wee bit. The 4-3 Juventus game was magic too.
Oh, aye.
That was a magic night as well. But
something was.
But by that, the 2 goals I think he got. But the Man U win with Nakamura's goal was special.
It was special.
Yeah.
And the thing with Strachan as well. Obviously, you think about Gordon Strachan. He's a Hibs fan. He made his name in Scottish football playing for Aberdeen, that great side in the early 80s. It goes down. So there's no association.
With Celtic, aye.
So initially you're thinking, we've had this before. William Brady, we've had it with John Barnes. We've had it with more success with Wim Jansen. Do you think it took a wee while for us to accept him?
Probably. I mean, not everyone. It depends. I was fine. I was quite happy to get him in. I thought, right, let's see what he can do. And so some fans, I think, like to have that Irish connection or a Celtic connection, should I say. But to me, I'm like, it's all about, are you good enough? That's all I care about. You know?
And he was, in your mind?
I was willing to give him a shot. And he proved that he was.
He did. And people now say, this is with hindsight, he stayed for a season too long. If you've won 3 in a row, of course you want to stay for another season. Well,
actually, his last season, we had the gap. We were out in front and we threw it away.
I'm thinking Ibrox, Scott McDonald. We beat them 1-0. It was 1-0 that day, wasn't it?
I can't remember, to be honest.
Yeah, that was the turn of the year. And you're looking at that thinking, we're better than this side.
Yeah.
And we beat them in the League Cup, 2-0, O'Day and McGeady. And we absolutely, I know it went to extra time, but in terms of looking at those two teams that day, we were a better side, in my opinion. And I know that history will tell you otherwise at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I look back on that last season at Strachan and then the first season of Mowbray. And I've heard from people within the club saying that in terms of merchandise sales, season ticket sales, Celtic View sales, there was a massive dip those 2 years. What was your feeling when Mowbray comes in?
Unsure. Again, it's funny. If you kind of look at it, Mowbray again, great start. We looked fantastic.
Yeah.
It seems to be the manager come in and have a really good first couple of months. It all goes wrong. Mm-hmm. Whereas the manager come in and it's a bit rocky at start, get it right. So Mowbray comes in. I mean, I remember again. I think it was at the game in Pataudry, and we absolutely barred them. And it was great. You thought this is fantastic football. Mm-hmm. But then very quickly, it just went wrong badly quickly. I mean, it was. Aye. I mean, you can't even describe. The image of Mowbray constantly sitting with his hands in his head in the dugout, shaking his head. You're thinking, this guy's.
It wasn't a transmit. There was a few things about that era, though, Ewan. I think about Peter Grant. I loved Peter Grant. Right now, that's probably a centenary season thing. Yeah. I loved Granty, and then the Airdrie Cup final, man of the match. I knew he divided opinion. I was at his testimonial. I loved Granty. So when he comes in as part of the team, if Mowbray's not going to be the vocal one, I'd expect Peter Grant to be the vocal one.
Do you know, my worry was, and at the time, my worry was Mowbray and Grant played in an era where Celtic didn't dominate. Mm-hmm. And my worry was, do they have the mentality to make us winners? And I think very quickly where things started to go wrong, I think their mindset went back to the 1990s.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
So
yeah, they hadn't known the same level of success. No. Grant in his early days.
Perhaps. But he was young back then. Yeah. I mean, I think Grant was, maybe 18 in the centenary year?
That's scary, actually, when you think about it. Because back then...
He might have been older than that. He might have been 20, but I mean, I remember Peter Grant was younger than
he came in very early, as did Derek White. These guys were making their debuts
it's in their teens.
Yeah.
That was the thing back then, teenagers.
Absolutely. He comes in, Tony Mowbray talks about a football utopia. Now, you compare that to the kind of chat you were getting from McNeill. I will do my best to bring success to this football club. I just want to hear about bring success to the club. Didn't tell me what style of football you're playing. Right? I know that they do it for a reason. Mm-hmm. They want to appeal to the Celtic fan base.
They're trying to sell themselves.
I get that, right?
Yeah.
But straight away I was thinking, and I liked Mowbray as a player. As I said to you before, out of all the signings that Brady made, big signings, we've got a wee bit lucky with Tom Boyd, swap deal for Cascarino. Cascarino, flop, 1.1 million. Gillespie, just under $1 million, flop. Slater, 1.5, flop. And the other one that he spent over £1 million on was Mowbray. And I think over the period that he played, we got a decent enough player. He wasn't a tremendous succce. He was a decent enough player.
I would say he's probably the best of a bad bunch at that time. I mean, he was okay. And he
gave us a huddle.
Aye.
So there was a good affinity between player and fan base.
See, I didn't even realise that it started with Mowbray until years later. Mm-hmm. Someone says, I was like, when did the huddle start? Because it was never a thing. And then you say, it was Mowbray.
Aye, Moga. Yeah. And of course, he'd done well. He'd done well at Hibs, he'd done well at West Brom. And we spent big to bring him in, him and his backroom team. Big compensation deal for West Bromwich Albion. Mm-hmm. So he talks about playing two wingers, the Celtic way, and McGeady and Maloney were going to be the two wingers.
Yeah.
I think one of his biggest problems initially, right, was he looked at the centre-half position, and at that point we had Gary Caldwell, Scotland's Player of the Year, Steve McManus, Celtic's captain, and he broke it up. He didn't rate them. Aye. Then he goes up top and he makes a big blunder because his marquee signing was a non-goal scoring striker.
What's that guy's name again?
Marc-Antoine Fortuny.
Was it 4 million or something, wasn't it?
Aye. And you're going to...
And that was his whole budget.
Big buy.
That's the thing.
And he doesn't score goals.
Aye.
I've since found that there was two sales that Mowbray didn't want to happen. The first one was Danny Fox. So we bring him in and we sell him pretty quickly for a quick profit. Mm-hmm. Mowbray didn't want him to go. Donati, who had fallen out of favour under Strachan, starts to come back into a game. Mm-hmm. And Peter Lawwell sells him because he thinks, I'm just going to strike while the iron's hot here. And Mowbray didn't want that to happen. So I get that side of it as well. but you can't go and get beat 4-0 from St Mirren.
No.
Just like you can't go and get beat 3-1 by Inverness Cali Thistle.
Exactly.
So,
there's that point when when you cross that line, there's no coming back.
I still like Mowbray though, as a person.
Aye. I've no ill feeling. I mean, Barnes talks a lot of rubbish. He slates aspects of the club. He makes things up, to be honest.
Yeah.
So again, I go back to what I said way back. Legends will never slate the fans of the club. To be a legend, I mean, it's like being an immortal of the club. Is you've never done bad or wrong to any aspect of that club.
That sounds like you deliberately brought us into the next era, because we move into another ex-player who comes in on an interim basis. He steadies the ship. We go into his first season. We don't win the league, but we win the Scottish Cup. And then the following season, we win the first of the 9. And that player, come manager, of course, is Neil Lennon. Now, Neil Lennon eventually has 2 periods at the club, but he has been very critical of certain elements of the fan base. We've spoken about it. You've heard us on ACSOM.
Yep.
Time and time again. Where are we with Lenny, Ewan? Where are you with Lenny? Because you're talking about legends, not bad mouthing the fan base.
Yeah. To be honest, I've never been like on the Lenny bus. When he got the manager as a caretaker manager, I remember when Mowbray got fired, I thought, right, that's fine till the end of the season. But then I thought he's got no experience. I was dead again. I don't like giving guys the Celtic job as their first ever job as manager. But to be fair, we should have won the league title in his first full season.
Yes.
Was that Inverness game, but about 5 games to go.
And remember the Rangers game at Ibrox, nothing each. We get a penalty. Commons and Samaras.
Was it Samaras missed it, didn't he?
He takes it. Big Sammy takes it. And by the way, Big Sammy on his day, I was a big fan, but it's saved.
Yeah. So then obviously, and the funny thing was, the next season, full season with Lennon is a horrendous start. We're 15 points behind Alan McCoy's Rangers.
Kilmarnock.
And then we're 3-0 down at half time against Kilmarnock. So I mean, it's like one of those moments where, wow, he knew it. That was him finished, and unless we done something, which we did. And then as the season goes on, there was rumours about Rangers' financial problems, but they started dropping points. We were gaining ground. Yeah, and then I think by the time we played them in New Year, we won that game, and then we actually went above them. And then it was announced about their financial problems. So they didn't, because I think the 10-point penalty they got that season, that didn't matter in the end, because we'd already overtaken them and we're the better team, and they just imploded, and as we know, died.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Well, see the thing with Lenny, that first time round, and we look back, and obviously the Barcelona's up there. Of course it is, 2012. And some of the players that he brings in, when you think about Wanyama,
it's a good team.
And Van Dijk, he brings in Van Dijk, and history cannot be rewritten.
No.
But a lot of people's opinions on Neil Lennon, I think, changed second time round. We'll get to that. But that first period, in your own mind, when Rangers first went into administration, then liquidation, were you thinking 9 in a row?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As soon as it happened, because you thought, who's going to stop us? No one can stop us. You were kind of hoping that they would. I was hoping they would never come back in any shape or form. I would have been happy to have a league with no Rangers. I would be thinking, thank you very much, because I think then the game would have evolved. That Celtic would have been, we would have had to have been given entry to a bigger league eventually if it's a one-team league. But yeah, absolutely. You thought 9 in a row was going to come.
I remember you thinking at the time, watching this unfolding, and remembering back to Celtic being saved, because of 2 completely different scenarios, as much as some people will try to tell you otherwise. And I worked with a couple of Rangers fans at the time, and I remember saying to them, very balanced in their views, what happens if there's a Phoenix club? Do you support them? And I remember asking at the time, no. Different club. It's not the Rangers I support. And that was the attitude at the time.
All of them said that. Yeah. Remember, no to Phoenix. They wouldn't tolerate it. They said that, no. But deep down they thought it was never going to happen. The thing that annoys me is just the way they were desperate for the 55 tag because it connects the dot to the past club to say, look, we're the same club because it's now 55. But it's not, it's one. I mean, where does it show you? I mean, where does it say anywhere that Rangers were demoted or relegated? It doesn't, because they weren't.
Where else in the world have you seen an example of that where there's a continuation? I mean, Simunovic, I'd need to check where he is now, but he's back in Croatia. You have a wee look, even just at the wiki on the club's page, and when they were founded and why they were founded, where they were. There's no continuation. They went bust.
Yep.
Right, and various other clubs have gone bust. And I know we very rarely talk. You listen to the show. We very rarely talk about Rangers. We're so involved in Celtic, but that was a big part of this process in that period of time. Do you think Neil Lennon took Celtic as far as he could
in his first spell? Yeah.
Or do you think he thought, particularly after the Barcelona game,
I think he thought
his stock was here?
Yeah, I think because let's not forget, Lennon left Celtic.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we asked him to go or whatever. He thought I'm going to get a job down south, and that always stuck with me. And I always remember thinking, I don't like that. I don't like that. You've basically we've given you the platform, and you've walked out as soon as you think. The Barcelona game, to me, it goes back to that magical. It was the 125th anniversary. We just had to win that night.
I know.
I think
no matter
who the manager was or the team was, we were going to win that game. I just think that totally.
See, one thing, and obviously it comes to fruition with the next gaffer, Ronnie Dyler. Neil Lennon never played Callum McGregor.
No,
never once played him.
I don't think Lennon actually much used the youth, did he?
He was very much
signings.
He bought players. He bought a lot of players. And there's a lot of those players, when you look at it, that didn't make the grade at Celtic during that period. We remember all the good ones. Aye. That's fine. We were very successful. But Ronnie Dyler comes in, a bit left field. It looked as though we were going to appoint Roy Keane at the time.
Dodged the bullet there.
Yeah. John Collins is already in place as a number 2.
Well, was it not supposed to be Ronnie Dyler was supposed to be Lennon's number 2? And then Lennon left.
Yeah.
And it left the club panicking. And it was like, okay.
Is there a suggestion that Lennon didn't want his number 2 to be appointed for him?
No, I just think Lennon wanted to move on to bigger things. I think he thought, right, I've done what I've done at Celtic. I want to go down south and be a manager down there. Because
I always think of Lenny first time round, and I'm thinking Alan Thompson, Johan Mjällby, Gary Parker. By the time he leaves, Mjällby and Thompson are gone. It's a different makeup. It's a different dynamic in the backroom team. And I'm now starting to think, just when you mentioned it there, I don't think I've ever spoken about this. Was he happy with, his backroom team being appointed? Who knows? Well, I mean, Alan Thompson was told to go. I think Mjällby left, didn't he? So, yeah, maybe he wasn't happy himself. But still. We'll bring in Ronnie.
Ronnie, yeah. For
me, yeah, he wins the 2 leagues in a row. He keeps a continuation of the 9, what became 9
in a row. Yeah.
He's very hard done by in his first season not to get into the Scottish Cup final. He wins the League Cup. We know, honest mistake.
Yeah, of course.
But I think his real legacy is the development of certain players.
Was it not Kieran Tierney?
Kieran Tierney, Callum McGregor. You also look at the development of players that came in whilst he was there. Chris Hire, for example.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember there being a discussion on a very early Celtic State of Mind video, which is on the YouTube channel if you want to go and check it out. And Kevin Graham and I are talking about Hire. And I says to Kevin, he's going to be a £10 million player.
Yeah.
And it seemed quite absurd to say that at the time. And he obviously came out to be. And I remember last season watching a game involving Norway and looking through every single player in the squad, where they had come from. And half a dozen players in an international team had been given their senior debuts by Ronnie Dyler. Martin Odegaard being one of the famous ones, Chris Hyatt and others. So I think his real legacy was the development of players.
Aye. Also, he was a player who kind of had the idea to change us into a modern thinking club, with diets, taking care of your body. Just, I'm not very good at these kind of scientific terms, but like sports science, using all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately for him, he inherited a squad who didn't
back on it.
Gave him problems. I felt sorry for Ronnie because, again, he had to face the media. The media were giving him a hard time.
Didn't you think Collins should have been given that job?
Aye, yeah, because he could.
Maybe Dyler wanted to. I don't know.
Maybe so, but he did all right. I mean, his first season he was actually really good. I mean, as you say, we should have had the treble. He had Van Dijk and Denier. Sorry.
Excellent. Yeah.
But I think when you've got a defender like Virgil van Dijk in your back line, that confidence goes through the whole team. And we were really good. And I think the downfall for Ronnie, in my own belief, was we sold the two of them in the summer, in the second season, and the team collapsed. I mean, I know we managed to win the league in the second season, but we were terrible. I remember being at a game, watching it, thinking, it was a mess.
That was the first season that I actually felt Aberdeen might win the league. There was points in that season where I felt that might have happened. Here's an interesting one. Van Dijk, I interviewed Ronnie Dyler. He had left Celtic. He'd gone back to Norway at this point, and he spoke about Van Dijk not having a lot of the traits that he would have expected from a top class player. So it wasn't, in terms of the diet and stuff like that, he didn't have that side of it.
Yep.
And a lot of the issues that Dyler faced from the likes of Chris Commons, for example, remember the Mulder incident, it was the senior pros who had maybe had it their own way under Neil Lennon, a different culture at the club.
Aye.
Ronnie struggled to get that culture in at the senior level, didn't he?
Aye.
He seemed to be able to. He gave
the kids.
He gave Ralston his debut.
The kids bought it.
He gave Tony Ralston his debut. There you go.
Yeah.
Another one.
What was he, 16 then?
17.
17.
Yeah. But the young guys, like you say, they embraced it.
Yeah, because they wanted to become a first team player. He was a manager, so they were listening. Okay, feed me more of this knowledge. Whereas you see the top players,
what does he know?
What are you talking about?
He's only managed in Norway.
I've been playing for 10 years and drinking beer and eating pies.
I know. But what we've now got is we've got a manager in Ronnie Dyler who has won league and cups in Norway, in Scotland and in America. And I look at his career trajectory and I think, where does he go? Does he become Norway's national boss? Possibly. But he's left on good terms.
Yeah, totally.
Celtic fans still...
Yeah, I mean, I know we'd had that horrible game at Hampden.
Yeah.
When we lost to that new team from Govan. But and that was basically the final straw. I think that's when the board knew we need something special.
Oh, you've led us right into something special, haven't you? I had the same kind of feeling when we appointed Brendan Rodgers as I did when we appointed Martin O'Neill.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I did.
Oh, buzzing. I mean, I know he was out of work, but he was a Liverpool manager, and he was that close to winning him the Premiership. And the football he was playing was really attractive. And you heard the stories how he was like top notch. He did it, and he was so professional, and he was very much similar to Ronnie Dyler. So it was a perfect continuation. But the big difference is he got instant respect from all the team. I mean, whereas Ronnie didn't. So Brendan comes in, signs. Think about it. Brendan actually didn't sign that many players, did he?
No, well, you look at that first.
He just kind of got the best out of what was there.
He tweaked
it. Very similar to what Ange has done.
Churi comes in, never to play 50 games.
No, he played
just to tide us over.
I think it was just more there for a kind of coaching capacity. I mean, he played a few games, but not many.
You've got Sinclair, who was a big success.
Sinclair was his big one, I think.
He brings in De Vries because he wants to play it from the back. It didn't work out. Dembele comes in. Absolutely brilliant. At that time, one of the best strikers I had seen. I'm going to ask you at the end of this to give me your best 11. I'm probably going to have to review mine because I think at that point I took out McAvenny and put Dembele. I'll need to revise it. These things are.
See, I've been thinking about it. There's so many players are going to miss out, and I'm thinking, well.
There's a few things about the Brendan Rodgers era. We'll just look at it as an overview. Firstly, the relationship between him and Peter Lowell, the battle of the egos, the loss of John McGinn and others thereafter. Did he have too lofty ambitions when it came to where he wanted to take Celtic compared to Peter Lowell with the purse strings? The McGinn was.
We'll never really know, I don't think, but I think. I think Peter Lawwell just found it hard to let go of the control, because we all knew for years and years it was Lawwell decided who came and who went. He had complete power over that football side, and then Brendan comes in. I think for the first year, he was given that power to him.
Aye.
But slowly but surely, Peter was just thinking, nah. I'm pulling this back. And it was the third season, the start of the third season. You could tell Brendan Rodgers was pissed off. Aye. You knew it, you could see it
across in his interviews.
Yeah, I mean, I think we signed someone, and he's like, I don't know. It's fed. And then
Terminado. Remember that interview?
And then we got knocked out of the Champions League qualifier in his third season. I can't remember who it was. It was Athens? No.
It was Athens, and there was a whole Boyata.
He refused to play. Yeah. And then, so you knew then, and I think that rubbed off on the team, because the team could sense that the manager wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. And it was actually that year, things started to go a bit wrong.
Yeah, they
quickly.
They did.
All of a sudden, Rangers were getting closer and closer to us in the league, and that gap was getting reduced.
It was, and I think when you look at some of the players he went on to sign at Leicester, he wanted Castagne at Celtic. McGinn, if he was to be sold by Villa, who knows what the fee would be. Mm-hmm. McGinn wanted to sign for Celtic. So it's frustrating. But then I look at the fact that we were winning the league at a canter first couple of seasons, but we weren't doing it in Europe.
No.
So if I'm trying to be balanced here, I'm maybe looking at it.
Well, we qualified, which was one thing, which we can't do at the moment. But once we got there, he didn't get the balance. I believe Ange is a better manager than Brendan Rodgers, simply because I can see it already. Ange knows how to set us up that we're not wide open when we lose the ball. Whereas under Brendan, as soon as we lost the ball, the team was just running right through us, scoring 7 goals in Paris. Horrific. I mean, that wasn't enjoyable to see. To lose that goals. I remember you're watching the game thinking, how many? That's not what support sales is about.
The reputation is the club.
Everything.
On a European world level at that stage, going down 7-1.
Yeah.
Opening the scoring as well.
I know. But so that's his downfall. And I think even now in England, Brendan struggled in Europe.
I remember again, not a name drop because I get accused of that a lot on the show, but Brian McClare spoke about a young Brendan Rodgers, and when McClare used to come up against his teams, when McClare was involved in the academy at Man U, he said they were particularly easy to play against. Yeah. He could only play one way. What about the manner in which he left us?
Hurt.
You still hurt?
No.
Got over him?
Come over him. Yeah, and I don't even have hate, because I still think when time goes by, you'll look back and think, a quadruple treble. And I know Lennon was in charge for the last part, but it was Brendan Rodgers, really.
It was him. It was his spade work. It was his blueprint.
Yeah.
And I think that when you've got that well-oiled machine, not taking anything away from who takes over, there's a huge momentum that continues.
Yeah.
Until eventually the wheels fell off, and we'll get into that.
Totally fell off.
Lennon response to the call comes in when we need a galvanisation that we knew Lennon could give us. We bring him back in, we welcome him with open arms. Like you say, gets us over the line to win the league and to win the Scottish Cup in a very difficult game to watch against Hearts.
Well, we had a lot of last-minute goals.
Yeah.
When he came in,
we struggled over the line.
So we fell over the line. That's for sure. Definitely.
Coming away from Hampden, I had parked up at the I forget the name of the place. Anyway, I remember getting a ticket that day. Outside, I parked my motor outside. There was a live band, and hearing the news that Lennon had been appointed as and I remember the reaction. Just walking back to my motor.
If I'm being honest, me as my pals, we didn't get to the game. We watched it on the telly, and elated. We just won treble. All right, yeah. And you thought, right, well, we know Brendan's gone, so right. We've gone from Ronnie to Brendan. We're in the right trajectory to continue this modern thinking, manager. And then when they announced Lennon got the job, I felt sunk like a lead weight. I was like, what? And then I really went from there down to there. I was in disbelief. I was actually angry. Mm-hmm. I was angry. That was my gut.
Did you think that was a measure of the ambition of the club at that stage?
I think it was Peter Lawwell wanted one of his boys control, but Lawwell knew he was going to go at the end of last season, I think, and he thought Lennon will get us over the line. You know what I mean? He wouldn't demand too much. He'll be my back pocket. Old pals act. But I knew straight away. I said, "This is a disaster. This is not going to go well." Because I knew the kind of football Lennon played, which was successful, but 10 years earlier, or almost 10 years earlier. And the team that we've got, the way we played, it was all constructed. You know, like players were coached. They had a system to follow. Lennon comes in and, like he's just like, out there and play. And then, I mean, to be fair...
Work it out for yourself was one of them.
I mean, this first season, when we actually won the 9, was really... Even at that point, Rangers were better than us. Sorry. Rangers were the better team. The cup final, we somehow managed to win because of Fraser Foster. I mean, they battered us. And then they beat us easily at Celtic Park in New Year. And then for some reason, they imploded and fell apart.
But they had that hex on us, which at the moment, they've still got.
I mean, that's almost 2 years that they've... Yeah.
We were doing the daily bulletins interactively every single day during last season. It was a difficult watch. It was difficult to come on a lot of the times after the games, having watched them not in person. The downfall was horrific. It was horrific last season. The way it ended, and going back to one of the points you made about a legend never badmouthing Celtic, and it did happen. It did happen. I'm now looking at where we are now. I'm looking at Neil Lennon. Where is he? Because I've asked you the question about Rodgers. Where are you with Brendan Rodgers? And you said, I'm over him. Where are you with Lenny at the moment?
Brendan Rodgers never criticised the fans. The fact that Neil Lennon, not once, but on multiple occasions, like, who are these new modern fans? I mean, I'm 50. I'm not a new age modern fan, and that's how I was feeling. What was getting said online, and I just lost all respect for him after that. I just thought, how dare you come out and slate us? We're the fans who've given you your career. We've put you up there on that pedestal, and then bang, 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 and you've just shot us down to cover your own tracks, to kind of say, I'm not a failure. It's not my fault. It's the fans' fault. It's the players' fault. It's the government's fault. It was everyone's fault bar his. And I just thought, nah, I'm sorry. That was it. And even now, to this day, I'm still not happy with him.
Do you think you'll get back into management? And if so, what level will
I doubt it. I seriously think clubs will think he's got a lot of baggage. I think when there's clips of him being a bit too many to drink floating around, is that the kind of guy you want in charge of your team? Not knowing if he's still like that or not. I doubt very much he'll ever be back in a manager.
When you consider the fact we're moving into 2022, it won't be long until, I'm not going to say we're celebrating, but there's going to be an anniversary of Seville 20 years later. At that point, Lenny was a massive part of that team. Do you think by that stage there will be a different feeling towards Neil Lennon, or
I think
from Neil Lennon to us as fans?
I think what will happen eventually is Neil Lennon will come in and apologise to the fans for... Because I think, he was under enormous pressure.
Yeah.
And he was getting it from all angles. And he kind of he came out guns blazing to everyone and anyone. I think eventually he'll realise and he'll apologise. Time's a great healer. As time goes on, yeah, I mean, he'll, to me, never a legend, but he'll a Celtic great, yeah.
I'm going to talk about the Ange Postecoglou reign. And again, we'll have a look at it. First 6 months, give me your report on Ange. Where are we with Ange?
I think I've seen the things on the podcast. I think I gave him an A. Hopefully, be an A+ by the end of the season. And now, folk might say, but we're 6 points behind in the league. We've had blips. But what he walked into, that's how you gauge him. Not like, because we are 6 behind still. I mean, Rangers at the moment are a well-organised machine, really. And they're not dropping many points. Thankfully, they had a wee spell at the start where they did. So the gap's not bigger. But since there's wee kind of hiccups like Wim Jansen did, we're on the right road. You can see that the team they understand the shape. And you're now watching us. We don't give away many chances. We don't give away many corners. We don't give away many free kicks. Whereas previously, like under Lennon, foul, free kick, corners are coming in all left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
The shape of the team, the way the players know where to be, I'm impressed. I mean, I'm seeing something special. I know it's early days, but we've got one cup in the bag. I think this could be a special year. I really do.
I hope we can look back on this. And we will. We'll do it again. But before we go, a couple of things. I'm still not satisfied with the board.
No.
I'm not satisfied with the board. There's a disconnect still between fans and board. That's the one aspect of the club, of the Holy Trinity that Brendan Rodgers used to speak about, that I feel disconnected from. It's not going to happen anytime soon, change, because boardroom change takes a hell of a lot of time to happen. Kevin Graham says he didn't really hear much from our CEO because we're not interested because things are going well.
Yeah.
But we have for a long time always had that figurehead. We don't have that at the moment, do we, in the boardroom, a strong figurehead?
Board matters. I kind of stick to the football side, so I know things are bad with the connection with the fans. I mean, you see the protests. Thankfully, that Bernard Higgins isn't coming on board, and that's definitely down to the fans. I think the board knew, wait a minute, we can't do this because the backlash was going to be huge, and it was affecting the team. And that's what I don't like. I mean, I'm all for protests, but it's when it affects the team in the park. And I felt those silent. Even Ange says, like, back the team. You know what I mean? I mean, when the fans don't sing, it affects the team. So if you want to protest, but back the team at all costs. That's what I think. But as for the board, the changes have to be made. But I'm not a businessman to know how you go about that or what's best. So, but definitely we need to get a better connection with the fans and the board. Because Ange has made the players and the fans and the team, we're one again.
There's a connection there. Total
connection. I mean, there's very few people who post comments now that are anything negative about Ange anymore. Yeah, sometimes after we have a bad slip up, you get some people overreact. And I just say, calm down, people. Keep calm.
I think the St Mirren game was a good example of that, Ewan.
Yeah.
After the game, Laura and I were very much of that view. It's a slight blip. Let's not overreact.
Yeah.
We follow up with a decent win in Perth. And there's going to be far more of them than the blips.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the progress. You can see that we're moving in the right direction. Whereas when a manager loses it, like Barnes or Mowbray and under Lennon, you can see it. It's all collapsing.
All going one way.
Yeah, it's all going one way. But with Ange, it's going the right way. And it's going at a good pace. But it's still new. It's his first season. We still don't have the players he wants. So there's going to be that wee blip here and there. But we're dominating games. It's not like we're getting well beaten by a team. We're giving the ball away and we're terrible. We're just not being clinical. Putting the ball in the net. Once we get that aspect right, which I think we'll after this break, we'll start to score goals and a lot of goals, and that will make us very hard to be beat. I mean, I think once we are full guns blazing, and when we play in the Glasgow Derby, we'll blitz them. I think they'll come in thinking they're as good as us or better than us and be expansive and open. And that's what we want.
Oh, it is. We enjoy playing against teams that are open like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I asked you to prepare something for me before you came in.
Yes.
So as well as your mementos that you brought along, I asked you to tell me your best Celtic 11. And I don't mean a team that played together. I'm talking individuals. Right. What's the best Celtic 11 you've seen?
So for the players that I've seen, so I'm going from about the early 80s to modern day. Goalkeeper, I would go for Arthur Borage. People might think Fraser Forster but Borage just had that character. He's just so iconic and a great keeper. So definitely Arthur Borage.
And you know what? He was quite cult as well. So he didn't always behave.
No.
Fans seem to like that.
Like that kind of bad boy part of him. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So and then I was thinking about the formation, how to fit my team in. And I've gone for the most successful period that I've witnessed, which is Martin O'Neill. So I've gone for a 3-5-2 because I love two strikers. And I didn't know how to play two wingers and keep up. So anyway, yeah. So Borage in goal. The full backs now, Van Dijk. Virgil van Dijk, I think he's just one of the most, well, he's proved it. The guy's just class. When he played for Celtic, he even had that class and the quality. So Van Dijk's in there. Now, one player I think doesn't get talked about a lot, but I thought he was amazing. I think he's one of the reasons why we stopped at 10. Mark Reaper.
Mark Reaper, yeah.
Mark Reaper was absolutely fantastic.
Solid.
He was solid, no mistake. And he actually taught Alan Stubbs how to be a proper defender. Because Alan Stubbs, I thought, was poor, under Burns. And then that year under him, Mark Reaper comes in.
Oh, he was
He was brilliant. And I've never forgotten that. And then the last one, this is tough because there's two iconic players, Roy Aitken and Paul Elliott. And it's like, and I'm still undecided. I'm going to go for Roy Aitken just because he's the bear. I mean, he was so iconic. And I think Roy Aitken was the best Celtic captain there's ever been. As in, like, there's no passengers. When we were playing, he made sure every other player in that park.
Think of some of the moments we've spoken about today. 85 Cup final, who crosses the ball for McGarvey?
Roy.
89 Cup final, who takes the throw?
Yeah. So he just beats. I think Paul Elliott maybe was a slightly better technical defender.
Yeah.
But just put Roy in there. I can't have Roy in there. So that's the full, but that's the centre of the defenders. Danny McGrain, right back all day long.
Yep.
No ifs or buts. Left back, Kieran Tierney. By a mile. Actually, I don't think there's been very many great left backs over the years, but Tierney's the standout. Centre mid, I'm going to go for Paul McStay. I'm going to put Scott Brown in there. I just think, because I'm thinking the balance of the team, I'm thinking Scott Brown under the first two seasons under Brendan Rodgers, that was quality. So he would just boss that midfield, and then McStay being the box-to-box striker. And then in front of them, now, I would love to say, like today's game, like players like Tom Roderick. I think Tom Roderick's fantastic. See when he gets the ball, you get so excited. You know something. Well, you hope something magic. But Moravcik.
I knew you were going to say Lubo.
Lubo has to be Lubo. Just had to be him.
Gift from God.
Yep. Exactly. He was fantastic. And then up front, well, there's one obvious one. Henrik, the king. He's definite. Now the strikers, there's so many other great strikers who can go in beside. You think about Harps and Sutton, you've got Nicholas, McAvenny, even Cadetti. We haven't even mentioned George Cadetti. Like George Cadetti as a striker. But it goes to Brian McClare. I just think Brian McClare had quality and he was a fantastic Celtic. I think he's not rated enough. I think he needs more accolades, recognition as how good he was. So to have McClare and they're both super intelligent, skillful players, them two up front, Moravcik behind, and you've got McGrain and Kieran bombing down the flanks with McStay and Brown bossing the midfield, and Big Roy, Van Dijk and Reaper. That's my.
Who's your manager?
Out of all the managers we've had, I'm going to be controversial. It's not really controversial. Wim Jansen. I just thought for that one season, what he did was a miracle. Yeah. And not just that, the style of football we played, it was great to watch. And at the back, it was right. We were solid. Again, Mark Reaper, solid at the back. Because I remember when we beat Rangers 2-0 at Celtic Park, I remember at the game, watching the game. And normally these games, you're never like calm.
You can't enjoy it. Exactly.
You can't enjoy it until the final whistle. But I remember when, Burley scored first and then Lambert scored a screamer. If I remember rightly.
Yep.
When we went 2-0 up, the game was won.
Yeah.
Because we just controlled it. Rangers couldn't even get close to us with that balance. So the fact that he gave us Henrik and he stopped at 10, Wim Jansen.
Love it. Now, you're here today because you listen and watch ACSOM on a regular basis. And you're part of the ACSOM team now. I mean, you're sitting there with the Shamrock top on. You've
loved
appeared.
it.
Will you come back?
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
I'd love that. Oh, could I just fill in? My daughter's here. Tiana, come on and say hello.
You've been sitting very
She's been sitting very good. This is one of my daughters, a shin shot.
I can't see your face.
Let's come down a wee bit, Tiana.
There we go.
So this is my daughter,
vintage
Tiana.
1990 Celtic.
I do have another daughter. She's 25, getting married next year, believe it or not. And this is my other daughter, Tiana, who's 11. So that's she's come along today to
to see how it all works.
See how it all goes.
Brilliant.
It's been brilliant, and it's thanks very much for
welcome back anytime. Thank you very much for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.
Okay.